They come with poison.
Children being what they are will inevitably squeeze the toads and probably put them in their mouths and suck them and so forth. All the results could be quite disastrous.
They come with fangs.
At first, I wasn't quite sure what bit me. I saw a lot of blood on my arm. I thought I was lucky it didn't hurt me that much.
They reproduce at an alarming rate.
And then there's an even greater concern is whether or not you are prepared for the scourge.
The best thing is to get rid of him, get a big stick, don't hit him with it.
They threaten to take over the entire world.
Worse than those ecosystems are probably going to vanish.
Attack of the invasive species! Today we're going to be looking at invasive species and how they wreak havoc on local ecosystems and lower biodiversity. I want to tell you a little story and introduce it to you, and it involves a tropical place called Hawaii. Let's take a look. Our story begins in Hawaii. The honeycreeper is a small bird that is native to Hawaii and feeds on nectar as well as other materials from plants. Since Hawaii is an island, it has relatively few predators that can attack it. An interesting thing happened to the population of honeycreepers on Hawaii. For a long time they were steadily growing following logistic growth. However, suddenly something changed. New species had shown up on the scene, and as its numbers increased, the honeycreepers rapidly decreased. It took a while to figure out that this was due to predation due to one organism, the brown tree snake. This guy, the brown tree snake. The brown tree snake is not native to Hawaii, however. It's in little islands nearly 1,000 miles away, and it eats the small bird life there. The brown tree snake had been brought over during World War II to Hawaii, and since then had been wreaking havoc on the honeycreeper population, as they had never seen this predator before and had no ways to defend against it. The brown tree snake is a classic example of an invasive species. Invasive species. Remember, more biodiversity in an ecosystem ensures ecosystem health. A threat to biodiversity is invasive species. What is an invasive species? An invasive species is a species that has been brought from one ecosystem to another by human activity. Invasive species rarely get to any location on their own. Most often than not, they're brought over by humans, either by accident or on purpose as pets or something. The cane toad is a great example where it was brought over to take care of pests in Australia. Can be brought two ways, by accident or on purpose as pets. A great example of an accidental one is known as the zebra mussels, where they were accidentally leaked out in ballast water in boats, thus getting into other waterways and causing massive ecological problems. An example of an on-purpose invasive species is the snakehead, where it was brought over to fish for. However, due to its rapid reproduction rate, it's now overtaken most lakes in the northeast. Remember, causes a decrease in biodiversity. They do this by consuming native organisms to the point of extinction. Invasive species have voracious appetites, usually consuming anything they can get their hands on. Often than not, ones that are brought over on purpose have major issues. For example, the cane toad was originally brought over to take care of sugarcane beetles that were loose in the fields. However, it ate everything in Australia that was within its reach except for the sugarcane beetles, thus leading to massive ecological problems and collapses of major food chains. This occurs as native organisms have not seen the invasive species, so they have no way to avoid it. For example, once again, the brown tree snake consuming native organisms have not recognized it or found ways to adapt against it. Secondly, they take up space of native organisms, forcing them to have nowhere to live. Invasive plants typically grow over native ones. One example is the kudzu. Kudzu grows at a very rapid pace and overtakes anything in its path, thus outcompeting native plants. Other examples are the California blackberry, as well as the honey thistle. Remember, all invasive species lower biodiversity. Why are invasive species so successful? They have high reproduction rates, as most are our species. Invasive species have a high rate of reproduction, somewhere close to the thousands within a year. This causes an overcompetition on their part, and thus is able to drown out other species that would normally compete. Since they have no natural predators as well, it ends up being an unfair advantage as nothing can remove the offspring, such is the case of the cane toad. Another example is zebra mussels, which can have close to 1 million offspring at a time within just a few short months. This can lead to major pipe blockage, as well as beaches and shores becoming littered with the mussels and unable to be used. They have no natural predators in the area.
If you were to press these glands here, there, you can see the venom shoot out, did you? There are numerous pores over there.
Cane toad venom is highly toxic, and thus even though one cane toad may die, it has ensured the death of a predator in the process, thus causing an unfair advantage into the cane toad and causing ecological food webs to collapse not only on the lower levels, but also the higher levels. And they have non-picky feeding habits, snacking on anything they can get. Invasive species have non-picky feeding habits, thus ensuring that they will always be able to snag a meal. This, however, can wreak havoc on natural and native food webs, as they're not used to a predator with this voracious of an appetite and are almost always decimated to the point of extinction. This non-picky feeding habit can extend beyond what we normally think of with predators and consumers. For example, this snakehead eating a mouse. Normally it would never be part of its food web, but in this scenario it considers it a meal. Even take this a step further, oftentimes attacking other organisms that would normally consider prey just for the sake of killing, as in terms of a predator standpoint, it's denying other organisms a meal. In its native land this would be common, but because it's in a new area, it causes massive problems. To top it all off, invasive species usually have extra adaptations that can allow it to be able to overcompete. In the example of the snakehead, it has what's called a primitive lung that allows it to take in air instead of oxygen from the water. This allows it to be able to literally crawl on land to travel from one lake to another where it can consume more species once the food supply in one lake has run out. No matter who they are or what they do, invasive species wreak havoc and lower biodiversity in native areas. Tonight, your discussion question is this. Knowing the way the economy is, with short amount of funds and everybody kind of trying to get a dollar for something, would you use money to take care of invasive species? It's a timely and costly process. However, it would save food webs in the process and make sure that some natural species wouldn't go extinct due to human meddling. I look forward to hearing your answers tomorrow, as well as I'll add a little tidbit of information that may change your answer. Have a good one.